Another meeting of the Cobra committee last night. The Prime Minister chairing, coordinating the police response. And, of course, today there is this list. I don't think the government is circulating the list, but it's a round of immigration centres or other kind of immigration places which it's said that they're going to be targeting today. It's a dilemma, isn't it? If you know that is happening in a place where you work, a nearby place, I mean, it could be a law centre next to a florist or a butcher. What do? Do you barricade it up? Do you stay away? Do you stand in front of your property to defend it? What's the right way to respond?
I don't know. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because, I mean, are they covered by insurance? I don't know if the property gets smashed up. It is very difficult. But, you know, I think rather than the Prime Minister having a spat with Elon Musk, he should get these social media companies into Number 10. That's what they should be doing. Get them in and talk to them directly.
I mean, Elon Musk is trying to have a spat with him, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
He's the one directing it with
why
him.
play to this childish billionaire's agenda? I mean, get these social media companies in here.
Charles billionaire owns a network which has been, in the last week, more than any other platform, allowing the spread of lies on a platform which 2 years ago, the people doing it, people like Tommy Robinson, they were not allowed onto Twitter, and he's allowed them all back on.
But this has been going on for years. I mean, they are...
It's got worse
social media companies are treated...
Over.
This TV company couldn't operate the way social media does, or newspapers. Why is this allowed to go on? They should be called in, summoned. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to stop it?
Well, we're having a debate later in the programme about whether you should be able to shut down social media in moments of tension. There are some technologies used by other governments that do it, but whether that's the right thing that the UK wants to do in terms of freedom of speech. But it'd be very interesting.
Well, I think it'd be very difficult because of freedom of speech.
Yeah, exactly. There's those factors. But just with the sort of some 30-area list, just because I'm not sure everybody is that familiar with the particular app it's been circulating on, it's called Telegram. It seems, as far as I can tell, I'm not on it, seems as far as I can tell to operate a little bit like WhatsApp, that you can be on a group on it. And within this group, these sites have been shared, calling and effectively that these are places where it's going to happen. So inviting people to join them there. And some of them, you know, to show, I mean, any site to be targeted is obviously not good. But some of them are so random. For instance, they are places where, you know, are listed as immigration centres but are actually nothing to do with it. And one woman has had to plead because her 88-year-old grandmother's home in Nottingham happens to be the registered business address of her son, who apparently has some kind of agency that works with it. And she's now terrified that rioters will turn up at her door. Now, we don't want rioters turning up at anybody's door, but it's frightening that these things are happening and people are now aware of them.
Yeah, it's immensely frightening. Where we are right now is there originally we're seeing coordinating attacks, and we're still seeing that right now. But we're also seeing now what we describe as lone wolf attacks, as in people getting attacked interpersonally in the streets, which is which is a lot more serious, a lot more hard to police, a lot more hard to control. This list, I've seen it myself too. I say it was shared around very, very widely about places that are going to be open, pretty much subjected to attacks, subjected to riots, and the riots also sometimes built in terror attacks. It's been shared very widely. It's very, very worrying.
It seems to be that it's being shared, you know, to happen today, and you're talking about 30-plus areas, so immediately the police are trying to cover that, but then things could be happening elsewhere. I mean...
Certain areas I'm not... So one of the things that's happened operationally on the actual... in terms of the actual vast activity, they're showing up in areas with low ethnic minority populations, but an ethnic minority presence, meaning that there'll be limited resistance to them or so. And so, thankfully, people have mobilised, anti-racist groups have mobilised people to those areas. But there's some of the areas in the actual list...
But then that's a worry.
Well, and the Home Secretary is saying, don't do that.
That then leads to confrontation in a different way, doesn't it?
But frankly...
The government is saying leave it to the police.
She is. That's exactly what the government is.
The governments are saying leave it to the police. The problem we're seeing sometimes is that the police haven't been anywhere near as effective as they should be. The state hasn't been on its front foot in this, as it should have been from the very, very beginning.
That is a legitimate debate, but to say that citizens themselves should take over is also a problem.
Vigilantes?
Of course not. Of course not.
I think it was the fact that you said, thankfully, anti-racist groups, and we want to be careful that we're not supporting the idea that individuals stand up to rioters.
Well, individuals have stood up to fascism from... it's a very long-standing British tradition. And so what we're seeing over here right now is just a continuation of that. Yeah. But also, when you look at the list of 30 places, there are certain places that I would be very shocked if they showed up. For example, Walthamstow was one place that was actually on the list. And, of course, that's an area of high minority communities or so, and high anti-racist activity. So if it doesn't show up there, it could be, I suspect it would end up being a disaster for them. So what we're seeing, it's we're in a very, very fluid situation, and employers now are having to respond in real time. I am aware of companies that are actually telling their black and brown staff not to show up for work tomorrow.
Are you?
Yes, I am.
Well, who are they?
Yes, I'm not going to name any names right now, but the companies are doing so. Even actually companies
because
that work...
they're in a public-facing position, or just from any
both
role?
public-facing and office staff or so, who actually, and office staff, to make sure, take the precaution not to show up for work
today. They're on a list of 38 places to be targeted, where they know that on an encrypted message group, rioters are saying, we're going to target that place. It doesn't surprise me that people would decide to stay away.
Yeah. I just think we've got to be very careful what Nell's saying about the relief, he said, that other other groups are going to go and take on these people. That's just going to fan the flames of this.
But it should be the police.
It's got to be the police. We've heard the Prime Minister talk about it. He said he's going to... What did he call it on Monday? A standing army, he said, is going to be deployed around the country.
Yeah.
Let the police do the job, please.
That's not what we're... Sorry, I just must be very clear.
Yeah, you want to clarify your own perspective.
That people should go there and go into arm-to-arm combat. The anti-racist side also haven't done that effectively, except in certain situations where things have turned particularly gory. Middlesbrough, for example, other areas so where you're seeing that, hey, look, groups of Asian youth or certain people also have had to effectively go in the street to defend their areas, to defend their communities from what we're actually seeing. But what I am not saying, I'm not calling for people to go into the street and fight with people, but I am saying that it's a very strong British tradition that where fascism shows up, people have taken a strong position against it. By that, I mean peaceful demonstrations against it.
That's right.
And I think that's a firm and legitimate position to take.
I suppose the worry is,
taking up arms to defend...
No, of course not. No, that would be crazy. Yeah, that would be crazy.
The worry is, though, that sorry, just one second. Is that you've got Wes Streeting raising to everybody's attention those poor Filipino nurses going to work, presumably to help those who might have been injured in the violence, and getting people throwing stones and bricks at their taxi going to work. The indiscriminate nature of it might well be what people who are employers are saying, protect yourself.
Yeah, it's appalling. I mean, nurses are in the front line. They were in the front line in COVID, they're in the front line all the time. And here they are again in the front and being attacked. It's unacceptable.
They shouldn't be. No one should be in the front line leaving your house. Your house should never be a front line.
They are in the front line of the emergency services, have always been there, and they are brilliant.
But it's beyond that now. It's not just like COVID where they're treating people. They are subject to potential attack by virtue of the fact that they are ethnic minorities, particularly Muslims.
Back to the social media thing. We've had, I think, 400 people arrested, 100 charged. Yesterday, a gentleman called Jordan Parler, aged 28, pleaded guilty. But he pleaded guilty to using threatening words or behaviour to stir up racial hatred. This was from home because he had a broken heel, a work injury. But on Facebook, he was out there saying to people, smash the F out of a hotel housing asylum seekers in Leeds. It's interesting and important to see whatever Elon Musk is doing, whatever Twitter is doing, when somebody's doing this on an open platform, people are now being charged for inciting racial hatred or inciting violence through what they're posting on Facebook or on Twitter.
Yeah, and good. And because social media is one of the biggest weapons these morons have got on their
I wanted to kind of take us in from that to Nigel Farage yesterday.
Well, can I just say one other thing, though? Because Nigel... talk about Nigel Farage,
Nigel Farage yesterday was on LBC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, last week he was out raising questions, he put it, he was raising questions about the...
on social media?
On social media, about the 17-year-old who had done the murders in Southport, speculating as to whether this might have been an individual who had had contact with the police or the security services beforehand. And he was being asked whether or not his comments were responsible. So the speculation that Nigel Farage was... The questions he was raising were based upon what he had read on social media from Andrew Tate, who is currently in, I think, Romania, facing charges on rape and trafficking. He had read these comments where Andrew Tate had said this was a migrant who'd come over on a boat and decided that that was a sufficient source to raise questions which clearly were in the minds of people as they then went to those terribly violent demonstrations and riots in Southport. I mean, it's quite shocking.
It's shocking. Standards have slipped in Parliament to a very, very significant degree. Nigel Farage, even by lowered standard levels or so, is not fit to be a member of Parliament. If you actually see the video that he's referring to in relation to Andrew Tate was driving a Bugatti or something, and he was just pretty much showing off his wealth and talking a whole load of rubbish. For Farage to then turn around and cite that as a source that inspired his thinking or inspired anybody's thinking really and truly demonstrates that we really, as a society, need to be thinking about who we're sending into Parliament and what we consider to be our leadership class. Because, frankly, he's not fit to be there. A lot of what we're seeing right now, he has to shoulder a lot of the blame and should be expecting...
He was elected by the votes of...
He won with a huge landslide, and I suspect he'd go to a much larger landslide than if you'd stood for Parliament. Let me just say, he also raised... in that interview, he's a very popular, charismatic figure, and he's one of the most important figures of the last decade. But let me just say, in that interview also, he raised a legitimate area of concern about two-tier policing, and it's a very important area. In Birmingham, on Monday evening, a group of Muslim youths went to a pub which was the people in the pub had to barricade themselves in. Somebody was assaulted. The pub was badly damaged. The police did nothing. They did nothing, and they've now admitted that they have issues about that with police. No, hang on, Ed. Ed, I haven't finished. I haven't finished.
That is a serious conversation. Yeah, but I was asking you about Andrew Tate, and you're taking us somewhere else.
Because this is very important. One of the most important things. He's being called, Keir Starmer, two-tier Keir. That is a nickname that's going to stick with him. That's being made by Elon Musk and others. This was
Elon Musk, who you said was a billionaire playboy.
He's a billionaire playboy. But that is a stick chart. But look, this is a very important...
Let's go back to Nigel Farage and citing Andrew Tate.
Let's go back. Why do you want to talk about this fact that the Home Office Minister...
We just played the clip.
The Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, just said they'd been provoked. She's the local MP. She's the one who nearly lost her seat to an independent Muslim. This is playing to the idea that... Hang on. This is playing to an idea that the police are doing it differently for different groups of people. And it's very important.
If they are, it would be terrible. But the thing,
I think it is.
The thing which we were talking about was Nigel Farage citing Andrew Tate as his source that the killer in Southport was a migrant. And I was asking you whether you thought that was acceptable.
I wouldn't have cited Andrew Tate as a source. And actually,
would you cite Nigel Farage as a source?
I think Nigel Farage is a very, very considerable politician. I think
I don't.
Well, I know you said you don't think he's fit.
No, he's not. He's not.
He's an incredibly popular figure.
But popularity and actually being fit for purpose are two entirely different concepts.
What basis is he not fit for Parliament?
Because of the riots we're seeing right now, which he's actually in part, in my view, their ringleader. He's provided political cover to them, and he's providing.
Go very carefully with what you're saying.
I tend to live in the fast lane.
Well, you need to substantiate the fact that Nigel Farage is a ringleader of these riots.
Well, we're calling them you
just said he's the ringleader.
He is somebody who's provided political cover to these active riots.
Well, I think it's a very serious charge, and you've got no evidence for it.
I provide evidence, the LBC interview yesterday, in which, time and again, he was asked repeatedly where he condemned the riot.
You've accused a member of Parliament of being a ringleader.
So, look... So Nigel Farage has been accused of contributing in his language.
He just said the ringleader.
Nels just said the ringleader. And I think, I'm not going to speak for Nels, but he has been accused of using language and irresponsibly retweeting and raising questions on Andrew. I'm not 100% sure that every person watching knows who Andrew Tate is.
I'm sure they
don't. So just to be clear, he's a right-wing, isn't he? He's been accused of misogyny.
He's a social influencer.
He's a social influencer, but one that, as Ed said, is currently, awaiting trial for accusations of trafficking and rape in Romania. So he's somebody who's notoriously extreme. Should we leave it at that?
Yep.
And he happened to mention his name when pushed as to why he asked those questions, which provoked a reaction in many. And I think what Ed was trying to establish and what Nels was maybe saying was that it's worrying that Nigel Farage is sourcing someone like that for information in such a sensitive situation.
Yeah, I guess I'm not here to defend Nigel Farage or explain, but I'm not defending Nigel Farage.
You haven't? OK, the tape will tell.
Let me just hang on. I will answer the point if you let me.
Please.
I would remind people again, I think he's one of the most charismatic, effective politicians of the last 20 years. I really think that. But I wouldn't have cited Andrew Tate. But what he's saying is he's got millions of followers and a lot of people will have seen that, so that's why he was referencing it.
But he was citing him, saying that it was a man who crossed the English Channel on a boat, which was just untrue. It was a lie.
It is untrue.
It was made up.
Can I put in proper context? Put Nigel Farage is popular, but he's a popular demagogue. And I must point out the key thing here is that when he was asked by Tom Shawbrick whether or not he actually disagrees with Elon Musk's assertion that if civil war is inevitable in Britain, he was repeatedly asked about this. He responded, "I hope he's wrong," and he was specifically pushed almost to say. He's wrong, he's been silly. Of course he's allowed to have that.
That's what I'm saying is, when you say put it into context, you're defining your opinion, and we totally understand
but he's allowed to have that
where
response.
you're coming from. But he is allowed to respond.
He's allowed to have that response, but the key thing is this, that you can give any response you want, but there's also the socially responsible response as a member of Parliament. Because, look, a civil war in this country would be an absolute nightmare for all of us.
Of course.
Let's ask,
of course.
please.